Oh, wow. In the final minutes, within 1 minute of the game being over, the U.S. scored. So
it's got memories of the miracle team, huh?
Yep.
They're
going all the way. Going all the way. All right. Great. Well, thanks for being here. We've spoken with you once before, but of course a lot has happened since then. Why don't you start out by telling us sort of your view of where we are in the campaign and where we have yet to go.
Okay, campaign is going very, very well. It's a very exciting time. We're happy to be initiating our tour of really central and northeastern Wisconsin. We've got a 4-day tour where we'll be in about 14 different communities. Our goal is to meet as many people across the state of Wisconsin face-to-face as we can. I'm running against 2 career politicians from Milwaukee, and I want folks to know that I'm the small business owner as an alternative. And I want them to know that we believe the entire state of Wisconsin is very, very important. And we're here to let people know that face-to-face today. And that's really what we're doing over the next few days. And, of course, we'll be back multiple times as the race goes on. The race is going phenomenal. Last time we saw you, it was probably fairly lopsided in the primary. The primary has closed to a point where it's very, very close. And most of the polls show us beating Tom Barrett in the general election, either Scott Walker or myself. So the race itself is going very, very well. From our perspective as a small business owner who has not been in politics over the last 12 years, we, of course, had to overcome the name recognition that the other 2 serving in politics have built up over those years. And I think we've successfully done that. The message is what's most important. When we talk with folks about a vision for the future of Wisconsin, the best place in the world to do business because that brings jobs here and the best educated kids in the world, it's a message that people all over the state of Wisconsin are joining us in. And the concept that we are losing so many jobs in the state of Wisconsin that you're going to have a governor from the small business owner, private sector who's met a payroll and is very focused on changing the business climate and environment in this state so we become the best place in the world to do business. A lot of people are relating to that. And I will tell you that the other issue that we hear every place we go is about education. Our parents in this state want our kids to be the best educated kids in the world. Our future depends on it. So the 2 messages as we deliver them around the state are being received very well. And for whatever it's worth, where we get to speak and meet with people face to face, I think the vast majority of them come around and join us in our efforts. So had a good morning already here in Wausau. Had met with some supporters down in Stevens Point. Started the day great. We were in a restaurant. We have, of course, our name on our van now as we travel. And a person waiting on the table came up and said, "My dad's been talking about you. You're Mark Neumann, aren't you?" And gave me his dad's name, said he wanted to volunteer in our campaign, and gave us his phone number. So great start to the day. That's really encouraging as a candidate.
And you did a recent thing. You released a education policy plan.
Yes, I did.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I brought a few copies with me. I probably should have brought a few more here, but you guys are welcome to them. My background is in education. I'm a small business owner, but before that, my training is in education. I have an undergraduate degree in math education. I have a master's degree in supervision and instructional leadership. I have postgraduate work then beyond the master's at Madison. I've taught in the public schools. I've taught in a UW system. I've taught at a private college. And 7 years ago, we started our first inner-city school. We now have 4 inner-city schools, 3 in Milwaukee, 1 in Phoenix, Arizona, where we're working with the highest risk kids in the state of Wisconsin. In those schools, we've learned a couple very important things. First is a fundamental principle that all kids can learn, and all kids should learn. In our schools, we measure via the Terra Nova test, which is a standardized national test. Our kids are growing academically faster than an average child across the United States of America. And we found that we can provide this quality education to these kids at about 40 cents less on the dollar, 40 cents on the dollar less than the public schools are spending on education. Very important concepts are in our schools. First off, we bring a business principle to how we manage the schools, and we are very, very focused that every dollar we spend on education impacts the classroom and the quality of the education that our kids are receiving. When I look at public education, and I see the rules and the regulations and the mandates that come from Madison, I actually got a copy of the DPI Book of Regulations. It's horrible. I mean, it's fine print, black and white, single-spaced. Just to have somebody from a school district understand what is in that DPI book has to cost a small fortune. As we announced our plan, I traveled with a superintendent of public schools, and he agrees with me that we can save 10% across the board in the cost of public education by eliminating mandates from Madison that have absolutely nothing to do with the education of our kids. So you'll find a very significant focus of this is reorientating the dollars that we're spending on education into the classroom.
You just
throw out a couple of those mandates, just since you mentioned them?
Sure, I can give you a specific. We have suggested in this book that we set up a panel. That I get business owner or business administrators, superintendents, et cetera, around me to help, so that I don't become Madison dictating to the school districts, but rather we join teams of people to do it. But having said that, let me give you a specific. When I sat on the Board of Regents at Wisconsin Lutheran College, I chaired the Finance Committee, and I served on the Executive Committee. The way we handled our audits for our books every year is we hired an audit team to come in and do the audit. They brought the audited books to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee then, as a representative on the Executive Committee, I took them to the Executive Board, and the Executive Board then brought them to the entire Board of Regents at Wisconsin Lutheran College, and they approved them, and that was it. You closed the books and went on to next year. Let me relate that now to our public schools and the mandates from Madison. What we do in our public schools is we hire an auditing firm to come in and audit our books. The auditors meet with our principals and superintendents. The principals and superintendents take them to the school board. And when that's all approved, they then go back to their offices and start filling out a boatload of papers under state mandate that they have to report to the state. And those people that are spending their time and effort filling out those state papers, that's money that we're paying those people that's not going to a classroom and has absolutely nothing to do with the education of our kids. So one specific example I would suggest to you is that the financial reporting to the state of Wisconsin beyond the school boards is a mandate that is costing us a lot of money that is not absolutely necessary. It's the reports and the paperwork going to Madison. In this one school district where I had the superintendent travel with me, he's a small school, he's a K-8 school district, but he's superintendent public schools. They have 544 kids in their school district. He told me that it costs between $50,000 and $70,000 a year in that small district just to fill out these papers for Madison. And again, I emphasize it, that it's a mandate that has nothing to do with educating our kids, but rather it's something that they're spending money on that's not directly related to education. The plan is much more comprehensive than that, though.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you give some more examples? I mean, 10% across the board, that's hundreds of millions of dollars. And
it is a very substantial amount of money.
On financial reporting isn't going to get you to 10%.
And again, I've got the suggestion in the plan is that we get representatives from across the board in education and sit down. The superintendent had a complete list. And again, I don't want to become the guy from Madison dictating what's going to happen. He had a complete list, and he came up with lots of money. But I don't want to put those words into his mouth either. So there are a lot of different things. The teacher certification is another key issue, and that may involve some money and some substantial savings. Teacher certification today in the state of Wisconsin, Madison dictates what's required in the school district in order to hire a teacher. We are suggesting that instead Madison should provide guidelines for what a school board should consider in hiring a teacher, but responsibility for hiring should be in the hands of the local school board. What that does is it changes fairly dramatically how we look at education. Because if you have a business owner, or theoretically one of you here in this room, a journalist, and for whatever you retire, if you're in your middle 50s and you make a decision to retire, you've been in journalism all your life, and you would like to teach a few classes in one of our high school on journalism based on your experience, real-world experience, under our plan, the school board would be able to look at that real-world experience and make a decision that you're qualified to teach in one of our classrooms. That is not the case today, and that's a dramatic change in how we look at education. Big picture, though, on this education thing, the focus here is to build a model where Wisconsin kids become the best educated kids in the world, and we're very, very focused on that. We want to bring people from all aspects of education together to help us form that model. And again, I've got a background in it, but I don't want to be a dictator. I want to be a team player in developing the model. Accountability is a cornerstone in this thing. We want all of our kids in the state of Wisconsin to take a test that has national norms established, whether it be Terra Nova or Iowa Basic Skills, not a government written test or a state or federal government written test, but rather a test that already exists with national norms established. We want to be in a position where we can evaluate the academic growth of our students. Anybody who's receiving public funding for education, we want to be in a position where we can measure the academic growth from one year to the next of those students. And then we want to grade our school systems. And I mean, to put this in perspective, if I'm a parent and I'm looking at a school and the test scores show us that the kids in this school are advancing 1.5 years for every year they're in the school system, that's a great school and they get graded an A. And down the road we've got another school system, we find out the kids are only advancing 6 months for every year that they're in the school system, so they're falling behind. That school's rated an F. So we've now got parents here who can look at their school and understand what's happening academically in their school. We would like to reward excellence in education, and we now have a tool to define what excellence is in education. If we have teachers, and we do in the state of Wisconsin, we have great public school and private school teachers. If they're advancing their kids academically at a very rapid rate, we want to reward our best teachers, and we want to reward our best schools. And I think financial rewards for excellence in education is an important component in building this model. I can keep going. There's a lot of stuff in this model.
Is this somewhat similar to what the federal No Child Left Behind framework? I mean, the performance-based grading of schools, is it sort of a state applying that framework?
The performance-based school, that concept you would find in here, but it's not a federal government program. It's not a state-mandated program. In fact, it's just the opposite. What it is a program built on competition. But we are absolutely measuring what's happening to the students. We want to know academically how is this school doing and how fast are our kids advancing from that aspect of it. But No Child Left Behind did not actually suggest that we use standardized national tests. They allowed, for example, for us to use the test written here in Wisconsin. The problem from an educational perspective of the state people writing a test is that we don't have national norms to compare that test to, so we can't lay it out there and say, here's how Wisconsin stacks up against other kids across the country. And I am very, very interested in getting to a point where we can actually document that our kids in Wisconsin are the best educated kids first in America, and then we want to develop a system that allows us to say we're the best educated kids, not only say, but actually have the best educated kids in the world. Think what this would mean, guys. I mean, just think, jobs, job creation, bringing business to Wisconsin. Just think what it would mean if we had, if people Googled the state of Wisconsin, the first thing that came up is that we've got the best educated kids in the world. Just think what that means not only for our kids and their future, but also for the opportunity to bring business here because they know we've got the best educated workforce in the world. I mean, the implications and ramifications of this are immense.
Can I ask you kind of a three-part question on the school and the issue of schools, and to clarify your position on what the state's role or what state government ought to do in terms of charter schools and specifically, and also virtual schools and also the school voucher programs. What are your positions there?
I think the answer to all three is probably the same. What I believe is that education should be about children. It should not be about bureaucracy. It should not be about Madison. It should not be about power. It should be about children. So I believe that if a school, an innovative school, choice, charter, virtual, you tell me, but a legitimate, innovative school, if they want to receive public funding and they can demonstrate that their kids are growing academically at least 1 year for every year they're in their system, I don't want Madison telling us what system is better than what other system. We want to make sure that our kids are growing academically, and if these alternative forms of schools, these innovative schools, can in fact provide education for our children in the state of Wisconsin at a savings of at least 10% to the taxpayers, then I would be in favor of those schools and would be promoting those schools. So again, if they can provide and demonstrate that our kids are growing academically, and they can bring the education forward at a 10% savings or more to the taxpayers, then I would support that form of education.
And I am interested in the teacher certification piece of this. I mean, is the idea that there's a large pool of potentially great teachers who are not being tapped now? Is the idea that there are that some districts may find it difficult to find teachers now? I mean, what problem does it solve?
It philosophically changes how we handle education in Wisconsin. Today, our control of education is centered in Madison, and it reestablishes the authority and the control at the local level. So the intent here is to empower our school boards, the people that are made up of parents and their representatives in the community, to be making the decisions as it relates to hiring and firing. Is there a pool of people out there that could be absolutely phenomenal teachers in our schools that are not allowed to teach because of the certification program? There probably are, but that's not a decision for me to make. That's a decision for your local school board to make. So this is really about pushing power out of Madison and back to the local level and empowering your school board to decide who it is that you have in your classrooms teaching your kids. I have a great deal of faith in our local people, our local school boards. We're talking here about parents of the kids, and what we're doing is talking about changing who's making decisions about education from somebody in Madison who's never met these children, and instead empowering people out here at the local level, the parents and the folks that know these parents personally and these kids personally, to making decisions for their education.
But I guess See, but all right, so that's a sort of a philosophical position or a direction that you want to move. But I guess what is the likely outcome? I mean, if you could philosophically move it in that direction and still see no particular difference in types of decisions made, and that probably won't happen. So what is likely to happen?
What I think is likely to happen is that we're going to find people that have a wealth of experience and knowledge gained through practical hands-on experience in either the business world and other professions that step into our classroom and provide some of that experience and knowledge to some of our kids. And I think it'll be very, very useful to them over a period of time. And I think that's likely to be an outcome of what we're suggesting here. I always use the example, if Jack Welch were to come here to Wausau and say, I'd like to teach a business class in your high school, with his wealth of knowledge in business and background, he would not be allowed to teach in our high schools under current state law. I mean, to put it, that's a far-fetched example, but it's what I'm talking about.
He'd probably join JA though, maybe.
But let's be realistic. You can reform the way we certify teachers as much as you like. You can promote vouchers and virtual schools and promote competition among them as much as you like. But Milwaukee's school system is plagued by much more than just educational problems. Mm-hmm. And it has been argued for quite a long time that Milwaukee's school system drags down the entire rest of the state.
I agree with that.
And if you're truly going to change Milwaukee schools, you've got to change the social fabric of Milwaukee in some ways.
And how do you do that?
You're the gubernatorial candidate. How do you do it?
Well, no, and it was a rhetorical question, but yes, that is ultimately the question. 7 years ago, when we made a decision to invest a lot of our resources, time, and effort into a 501c3 organization aimed at those inner city kids, that was the heart and soul of the question. I watched while I was in Congress as we sent millions and millions of dollars to our inner cities, and what we effectively did is create a generational welfare. And that's what I saw firsthand sitting on HUD and some of the other committees I sat on in Congress. So when I got out of Congress, one of the things we were interested in is how could you in fact change the fabric of the inner city, and that answer is education. I mean, in my book, the only hope that we have for changing our inner cities in the nation, in the state of Wisconsin, but in the country as a whole, is to change the education system. If you want a big picture vision of how we restore our inner cities and how you change the fabric, let me give you the big picture that was the impetus for these schools and is still our central theme and what we're thinking about. If we can get to a point where we have enough of these schools and the kids are coming through our schools from kindergarten through 12th grade and they're graduating, they're going on to college, they're getting their college degree. So now they're prepared and they're armed for the workforce. They then come back to the inner city and they settle in the inner city and they become two things. They become role models and they become an educated workforce to attract jobs to the inner city. And a lot of them are going to bring jobs with them in the form of their own businesses. So the big picture dream here, the big picture dream is we get these schools going. The kids come through our K-12 system. They go on to college. They get their college education. They get married and they come back and they settle in the inner city, their home, and they bring with them the role model that we need to reform our inner cities. For whatever it's worth, I believe that education is the best hope for restoring our inner cities. I concur totally with what you said about Milwaukee dragging down the entire state, and it absolutely has to be fixed. If you read this plan carefully, we have specifically addressed some of the issues in Milwaukee, and there's a couple of very important things that would happen if this plan is implemented. We have today in Milwaukee is a choice and a charter system that competes with the public schools. Now, there's about 20,000 students in the choice program in Milwaukee today, 21,000 students, and there's about 80,000 in the public school system. It's capped at 22,000. So we've got a system that is working much better, costing the taxpayers less than half as much money, and we've capped the number of students that can go into that system, and we've forced 80,000 to stay over here in the system that is less effective and costs twice as much money. One thing we would do in this plan is we would eliminate the caps. Second, in Milwaukee today, now you're in a particular corner of the state, and I'm here in Wausau, and I think it is very important we relate this to here in Wausau. They are draining your resources with what's happening there, and if 80,000 kids go through that school system and it's failed, they're going to drain more of the resources that we should be spending up here in Marathon County and in Wausau. But the second thing, in the city of Milwaukee, if you are a parent that is working, and you're living right next door to a parent that's in poverty and is not working, you will have no choice but to send your child to the public schools, while the parent next door that's not working and in poverty has a choice of where they send their kids. They could send them to the best choice school in the city if they so desire. So the second thing we do in this plan is we say this is not to be limited by income caps, but rather anybody who would like to choose to send their child to a different school. And again, back to that philosophy, as long as our private schools or innovative schools can provide the education, demonstrate the performance that the kids are growing academically, and provide the education at a savings of 10% to the taxpayers, this is a good thing, not a bad thing, and we want to encourage it. So there's no income caps in this plan. So our middle income families are eligible to participate in the Choice and Charter program. Third, in Milwaukee, very, very important component. If your school is rated as a failing school for 2 years running, a D or an F school, that is to say you're not advancing your students academically the way we need to see the advancement, then the competition, the Choice and the Charter and the other innovative schools can be reimbursed at the same rate as the public schools. Now, if we think about that for a minute, what we do in that setting is we now become a magnet for competition in those areas where our public schools are failing. And by the way, this is not just Milwaukee. If you travel the state with us, you'll find other areas where they will tell you that their failing school system is causing business to leave. So it's not just Milwaukee, there are other spots. So if your school is a D or an F for 2 years running, the competition then can be reimbursed at the same rate as the public schools. We will quickly see the best academic schools from around the country locate in Milwaukee and elsewhere where we have failing public schools. Again, you guys, we're all on education here, and there's more to the race than that, but it is something I care a lot about. The KIPP school system is nationally known as one of the best educational systems in the country. If we have a system where they're reimbursing KIPP at the same rate as our public schools, KIPP will be here in the first year, mark my words. But my point is we become a magnet for the best private school and innovative school operators in the country to locate in those areas where our public schools are failing. Now, and again, we're talking about the failing public schools. Remember, we have a lot of really great public schools in the state of Wisconsin that are very successful. They're not going to have any problem at all. It's only where we have the failing public schools that we're going to bring in competition. And the competition is not designed to destroy the public schools, but rather to put them in a position where they have to get better in order to compete for the students. Sorry, last thing, one more Milwaukee. We have all kinds of empty school buildings in Milwaukee. The single toughest thing to start in a new school, and I can speak from this from firsthand experience, the single most difficult thing in starting a choice or a charter school is facilities. Milwaukee has all kinds of vacant school buildings sitting all over the place. We want to open those school buildings to choice and charter schools in areas where the public schools are failing. Sorry, I didn't mean, there's a fairly comprehensive study of Milwaukee in there that I think would be very useful.
The other biggie on your list there, if anybody else had any education-related questions, was the best business climate.
Yep.
Can you expound on that a little bit about what are the examples or specifics in that plan?
Yes. Let me start with the answer that most candidates for office will relate to you. We need to get spending under control so we can cut taxes. I mean, clearly that's first on the list. If we're not competitive from a tax perspective, we can't attract business. Second, and it goes to education, I believe if we have the best educated kids in the world, that becomes a very important component in attracting business to our state. And third is our rules, regulations, red tape, permit time, permit fees, all of the things that go with both starting and maintaining a business in the state of Wisconsin that serve as impediments to businesses coming here, staying here, and growing here. They need to be corrected. Guys, I'm a small business owner. I deal with this stuff on the front lines, and it's horrible out there. And it is clearly an impediment to businesses coming here and staying here. So the environment for our business has simply to be changed. Let me give you a business owner's perspective on how we actually accomplish this. What I want to do is I want to go around the state of Wisconsin. I want to find successful business folks, small, medium, and large, that have met a payroll every week. I want to get them to serve on our economic development team. I will chair the economic development team, and we will meet on my first day in office because that's what I consider to be the most important issue. The first job of the economic development team is to fully comprehend what the problem is here in the state of Wisconsin. And to do that, I want them to do two things. The studies that are out there that rate us as one of the worst states in the country to do business, the Forbes magazine study that put us at 47th, or the metropolitan UW-Milwaukee study that shows that we're one of the worst metropolitan areas to do business. I want to take those studies and I want to really understand what they're saying and why they're saying it. That's our economic development team. Next, I want to send them to, and don't forget the vision here. The vision is we'll be the best place in the world to do business. I want to send them to states that today are doing very well in the business climate. Texas, for example, if you read, I think it was USA Today that I was reading this morning, which they threw at our door at the hotel, but it said, you know, middle of this recession, Sun Belt going down, but Texas still gaining jobs even in the middle of this thing. So the question for these successful business people that are serving on our economic development team, what is it that Texas is doing that's allowing them to grow and succeed and add jobs to their business climate even in the middle of this recession that we're in? I want to then have a specific list from these business people who understand business. What do we need to do different here in the state of Wisconsin to reach this vision of being the best place in the world to do business? I want a specific list. I want them to implement that, and when the plan is in place, I want them to market the living daylights out of it. I want to let everybody around the world know that we've changed in Wisconsin.
So you want business owners to set state policy on economic development? Exclusively business owners?
I want small business, successful business owners from around the state of Wisconsin and business leaders from around the state of Wisconsin.
Why is it important that there's small businesses?
Small, medium, and large. I want it across the board. Look, I'm going after every business I can find in our country and around the world. I want people who have actually experienced on the front lines what it means to run a business to communicate with these folks that we're trying to attract. I can think of no one better than to be on this committee than our private business, small business owners, medium business owners, and large business owners that are successful. And I'm going to go to them, I'm going to look them in the eye just like I'm doing right now to you. I'm going to say, look, America has been made great by people setting aside their business for a period of time and serving their government. I need you to put your business aside and come join us in Madison. I can't get these businesses here by myself. I need experienced people to help. Put your business aside and come join us.
Can I ask, because I mean, in my experience, it's at least in what politicians say, it is something close to consensus that there's a problem with the business climate and that steps need to be taken. And it's been my experience that I've spoken with Democrats who say I want to meet with business owners and see what we can do to improve the business climate. What is different, or what distinguishes your plan from others?
Two things. First off, what you just described is exactly what they say, and it does not work. It does not work because these are career politicians sitting down across the table from business owners who do not have a clue what it's like to actually meet a payroll week in and week out in the business world. They don't have a clue what it takes to expand a business. They don't understand what it means to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out how to have a business plan that our bank is going to accept so they will continue to advance us credit. And they don't know what it means when Madison, the DNR, decides at a last minute after you've closed on a $15 million piece of property and you have machinery sitting on a site that they change their mind on the base and study size that they want and hold you up for 3 weeks and you miss they don't understand. If your career is in politics, they just plain do not understand what it takes to run a business. And therefore, they cannot communicate with other business owners and they cannot create a plan to actually attract them. So the idea of having a business owner in the governor's chair and the idea of having business people chairing the Economic Development Committee and leading the Economic Development team is a very new concept for the state of Wisconsin. I'm very, very optimistic that it will work because these people have been successful in what they've done. In spite of recessions and everything else, we've got businesses out there that are doing well. And we need these people who are entrepreneurial enough to figure out how to get it done to help us restore this state. I'm very, very committed to this concept and this principle.
The kind of existing business kind of question, the statistics today you may have seen showed new home sales dropped 33% or something to a new record.
Since '63.
And a big surprise to everybody, but now there's no...
Not everybody.
There's no aid out there anymore, so... in any case, whether it's a surprise or not, that certainly affects a lot of existing business in our area.
Right.
We've got a lot of window manufacturers, door manufacturers.
Wassa Homes.
Wassa Homes. A lot of folks who have, I mean, they've already retrenched Wassa Homes. They've already laid off a lot of folks. Poof, you're governor. What do you do about that? This is not just a Wisconsin issue. It's a national issue. But how do you address that? How does a governor get involved and help solve that jobs and business situation?
You mean specifically in home building?
You think, yeah, let's take that industry.
Well, in-home building, and again, there's no easy answer to what you're asking. I know you know that. In the home building industry, our companies have managed to survive and actually prosper even in this downturn. We found niches in markets that work. I mean, the only thing I can tell you as governor, and this is what I was going back to, the same concepts as I was saying before, we need an entrepreneurial attitude. We need people with private sector experience, and they need to be on the ground. Our company, we started a company 3 years ago. They built one home their first year, 28 the second, and they built 50. They closed 50 homes last year in the middle of this recession in a market that is off 80% from its peak.
So you would tell these industry leaders that to have an entrepreneurial attitude and to find niche markets, that kind of thing.
That would be my recommendation to them. But what I'm really saying is that what we need in someone in the governor's chair who has this entrepreneurial attitude and entrepreneurial approach to solving business problems, and in fact has the experience in the private sector that can bring that entrepreneurial approach to the government. It does go back to, though, and for whatever it's worth, I honestly believe it's going to work. I believe it's our best hope. It goes back to we need people that have been successful in business even in the middle of this recession. I want to know what it is that Texas is doing, that they're attracting jobs in the middle of this recession.
They have energy, giant energy industry.
Well,
So
come on, though.
economy.
We have all kinds of wonderful things here in the state. I do not accept the premise that what they can do in Texas, we can't do better here in the state of Wisconsin. I do not accept that premise and will not accept it as governor. So I want you to know my attitude, and if I'm too strong on this, I apologize, but my attitude is anything they can do there, we can do better. We can, in fact, find out what our resources are and our strengths are here in the state of Wisconsin, and we can capitalize on those strengths just like they have down there. It's not just oil in Texas. If you talk to the governor, as I have down there, you will find out that he's, number one, focused on a high-quality education system. This isn't just by accident. I mean, it's my background, but talking to Governor Perry down there, high-quality, affordable education. He's going to tell you that's very, very important. He's going to tell you that the environmental rules that they deal with down there protect their environment, but he's also going to tell you they figured out how to facilitate business growth and development and to be viewed as business-friendly even though they're protecting their environment. Taxes, you guys who go to Texas and check their tax rates, he said, look, if I want to attract a business, I have to be competitive from a tax perspective. So it's not just that they have oil down there, it's their entire approach to how they're doing business and how they're attracting businesses to their state. When I told Governor Perry, Sue and I were down there last September, we met him, for whatever reason, we got about 25 minutes with him one-on-one, and we really got a chance to talk to him with what he's doing different in Texas. I said to him, I told him we're from Wisconsin. He said, he was telling me how he can compete with any state in the country and any country in the world in Texas. That's his attitude, that's his approach. And if you think I talk strong on it, should have heard him talk about it. He takes no guff from anybody. He will take any job he wants from anywhere in the world if he wants it in Texas. When we talked to him, I said, I'm from Wisconsin. He said, well, I don't really compete against Wisconsin. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you have to be in a game in order to compete. Wisconsin's not in the game. So, I mean, just so you understand how bad we are viewed around the country. I mean, he basically just said Wisconsin doesn't exist. You can't compete with us, with Texas, for a job if we choose to take it. So that's the approach, guys. That's the attitude I'm going to bring to this thing. We are going to make it work because we don't have a choice. I mean, the choice in this matter is that we continue down the road we've been going down. We continue with career politicians running the state and running this country, and our children don't have a future here. That's the path we're on today.
Mercury Marine was on the verge of leaving, and
Yep.
through a package that they were retained. Are you supportive of that approach?
The Mercury Marine and other businesses of that nature, you need to look at a cost-benefit analysis to the state. When you talk about state tax dollars, your dollars being used to fund a business in another location, I'm very cognizant of the fact that it needs to be beneficial for the entire state of Wisconsin as opposed to one local area. So you can expect to see me putting together packages and doing a cost-benefit analysis on it. To be more specific on that, I would probably be looking at the tax revenue generated by the business over a period of years and consider using a portion of that tax revenue as some sort of an incentive package to keep them here. But there will be a cost-benefit analysis on anything we do. I'm very concerned about states that spend $1 million to attract one job. I just don't think that's the answer.
Well, I want to ask you about the story that was reported in the Journal Sentinel, I guess this week, that one of your schools received $175,000 or so from the stimulus bill, and I think that folks who were in favor of the stimulus bill would say it's a good function of what the stimulus did is, help schools that are in a bad situation or whatever. Do you see that
No.
as a good function? Or?
Well, the stimulus, the government does not have the money. So for me to look at a stimulus package, I would tell you that it's ludicrous that the federal government put out a stimulus package knowing that they're spending $2 for every dollar they have in their checkbook. So I would have adamantly opposed stimulus. The stimulus money that you're talking about was actually in Phoenix, Arizona. Mm-hmm. Phoenix, Arizona, the state of Arizona signed a contract with our school to deliver a certain sum of money, and they delivered that sum of money at the last minute, plugged a budget hole. They should not have plugged a budget hole with stimulus. They should have reduced their spending, is what they should have done. And by reduced spending, I don't mean break a contract with the school. I mean, they should have figured out other ways to save the money. So I am clearly opposed to stimulus as a government policy. If you want to stimulate an economy, you cut taxes. You let people keep more of their own money, and when they keep more of their own money, they will either save it or spend it, either of which will lead to a booming economy. Stimulus is government spending, and we should not be doing that. As governor, if a stimulus package is put in front of me, what I will do is I will offset every dollar in stimulus. First off, we need to understand, in order to be competitive as a state, we can't have Michigan taking $3 billion in stimulus and Wisconsin going, we're not going to touch it. So in order to be competitive, the stimulus money would be returned to the people in the form of a tax cut. So if we take stimulus money, even if there's strings attached that say you have to spend it in a particular area, we will offset any dollar received in stimulus money with a corresponding tax cut for the people. And you want to see a stimulated economy? Cut taxes.
I want to go back to education just for a second. We recently in Wausau, the district and the teachers union were at an impasse and headed toward mediation arbitration. And it seemed as though the formula in Wisconsin pretty much guarantees that when that happens, costs to taxpayers go up, because the mediator or arbitrator says, I'm going to compare the contract being offered to your teachers with similar contracts in similar districts, and they all went up 4%, so yours is going to go up 4%, or whatever. And that seems to be a recipe for a perpetually increasing school cost formula. If you're going to address an education problem and a tax problem, you're going to have to crack that. How do you do that?
First off, the caps and the controls that were in place to prevent that from escalating even faster need to be kept in place until we can adjust the actual overall cost of education in the state of Wisconsin.
So the QEO
needs to stay in place until we can implement the plan that we've laid on the table. When we get to a point where we can implement that plan and remove the state mandates that are so costly, redirect our dollars into the classroom so we can bring property taxes down and have significant savings across the board in the cost of education in the state of Wisconsin, you can't fix that problem.
Let me clarify the terminology here a little bit. QEO needs to stay in place. We don't have a QEO right now.
No.
You would re-implement the QEO.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
sir. Yeah. And again, the concept of QEO is not even something I like, but I think it's necessary to protect the taxpayers today. As we implement this plan and get the state of Madison out of education as much as possible and restore the power locally to do it in a more cost-effective manner. And again, I just keep thinking back to the conversation with Governor Perry from Texas. High-quality education, best education in the world is what we're shooting for, and we want to do it in a cost-effective way where we have local control. When we get to that point, some of these other problems that we're talking about will, I don't want to say they'll go away, but they will certainly be significantly less because of the lower cost of education overall.
Well, you said local control, which would bring the question out from my mind is your re-implementing the QEO doesn't square with what you said earlier about you trust local school boards to make good decisions.
Well, in fact, what you're saying is correct, and hear out that whole thing. The QEO is necessary until we can implement this plan. This plan is not implemented today. Under state law that we have today, we need to protect the taxpayers the best of our ability from those costs going even higher than what you're currently, or what you did see in the recent past. So we do need it today. the plan is implemented, it should bring down the overall cost of education, but you can't just jump from one spot to the other to kill the taxpayers. Again, to be very clear on this, this plan brings down the overall cost of education significantly, and it should have a very positive impact on property taxes locally.
Can I ask you to respond to, to speak to, I guess, some of the proposals that were put forward by the coalition group, the Wisconsin Way. We've met with them a few times and as an editorial board, have an interest in some of their proposals. For instance, they talk about reducing property taxes substantially, but somewhat making up for that by through a shift to the sales tax. These sorts of proposals. Are you familiar with the group, and what are your thoughts on it?
I'm familiar with them. I'm not an expert at what they're proposing. I will tell you, every time I've talked to forms of taxes, the question I ask is, at the end of the day, is there more money in the pockets of the people, or is there more money in the pockets of government? And I've typically found that when groups suggest shifting costs, that there's more money in the pocket of government at the end of the day. So any consideration of change in tax, the question needs to be addressed. At the end of the day, where is there more money, in the pockets of government or in the pockets of people?
But I mean, it makes some difference, sort of how it's distributed too, though. And I guess that one of the premises is that property tax may not be the most kind of the fairest way to distribute that. I mean, does it, or is it just a bottom line issue?
Well, again, before we consider seriously any shifting, I would want to know what the ultimate outcome is. And if it winds up with more money in the pockets of people and less money in the pocket of government, I would certainly be listening.
They had all kinds of sort of proposals about innovative approaches to education too, which is a hot topic for you, and longer school years, or shorter college periods where you get your degree in 3 years through the UW system to save money, that kind of thing. I know you said you're not an expert in what they're proposing. Do you expect that this would be something you would pay a lot of attention to, or are you concerned about who these people are that put this together and that would make it a low priority for you?
The high priority would be forming a blue ribbon panel, which is what we suggested in here, that chaired by myself with my educational background, and then with representatives literally from all across the educational field for recommendations on that. But I will tell you, when you talk about the state of Madison, Madison dictating to a school district that you need to add this many hours to your school year, I'm more interested in the academic outcomes. If we've got a school that has fewer hours but is advancing their students faster academically than another school that's spending more hours, I would suggest to you that we probably want the more efficient school. And that's the same thing with costs. When you talk about cost of education, if we have one school that's advancing our kids 1.5 years for every year they're in the school system, and we have another school that's advancing them 1 year, but one is costing us 10% more and the other is costing us 10% less, why wouldn't we go with the one that costs less and is producing better results? I mean, that's a general philosophy attitude in the whole thing.
Let me shift course here a little bit. The oil spill in the Gulf has brought quite a renewed focus, I think, to energy and the way in which we use it in the United States. Governor Doyle has the state on a course to rely much more heavily upon renewable energy sources in Wisconsin. I believe 20% by 2015, 2020. In any event,
2025.
2025. What are your views on that course? Businesses have had some concerns about it. We now are addressing it in some ways by importing energy from outside the state.
Sure.
There's a proposed biomass plant here in town. Can you tell me about your views on energy in Wisconsin?
Yes. The Doyle plan is made up of state mandates and taxes and cost to business, and that is not okay. So I am adamantly opposed to the 25-25 plan as suggested by Jim Doyle. It'd be costly to business and drive more business out of Wisconsin. Similar response to cap and trade from the federal government level. That's not the right way to go about it. Now, having said that, you're talking to someone who's relatively an expert in this field in certain aspects of it, at least. The last thing I did before leaving the home building industry, we designed and built a home that produces all the energy it needs for heating, cooling, running all the appliances, and enough extra electricity to get an automobile back and forth to work. So it is literally self-contained as an energy, from an energy perspective. And the most important thing in doing this is we made it cost-effective for the people living in it. The folks that moved into this house, about 2,700 square feet, if I built the identical home next door to more conventional standards today, it would cost more to live in the conventional home than it would in the home that we built. So we are market-driven. It is cost-effective. We can achieve what you're talking about. We are going to see a monumental change in how we have energy in the state and in this country in the not-distant future. And I want the research for that. I want the development of that right here in Wisconsin. Can we achieve 25-25? If government would get out of the way and allow our entrepreneurs to do their thing without impeding businesses, businesses are going to far surpass that, but it's not going to be because of a government mandate or a government dictate. It's going to be because it is financially and economically viable and the right thing to do. So we have a company formed, Renewable Energy Solutions. We are working extensively in solar energy. We've seen a cost of producing kilowatts in solar energy reduced by more than 20% in the last year. We've seen the space that you need for solar panels on the roof reduced by 30% in the last year. And we're seeing now that the pitch of the roof, as the new solar technology comes out, the pitch of the roof is no longer as important as it was before. So we're seeing monumental moves forward in this, but it's not because of government, it's because of entrepreneurs like our own company that is moving this business forward in an economically viable, market-driven way. So you're going to see me a strong proponent on pushing to energy independence in the state of Wisconsin and ultimately for our country. But you're going to see me pushing to do it in market-driven, economically viable ways. Let me give you another example. I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk too fast on something I'm very excited about, and it will be a very important component in our administration. Down in Racine, there's a company, it's part of the Case family. It's Johnson Diversey is the name of the company. Because they wanted to do the right thing, they set out to reduce their carbon emissions by 25%. They went into the project and they found out, I don't recall the number, $13 million was the cost. Over a 10-year period of time, it was going to cost their company $13 million. At the end of the day, they found out that the savings to their company was going to be $35 million. I don't recall it. I may give you the numbers just off a bit, but the bottom line is they spent like 13 and saved like 35. And that's what I'm talking about, where if government gets out of the way and allows the entrepreneurs and allows the business people to get this job done, we can move much more rapidly to energy independence. I'm a strong proponent of weaning us off of our dependence on foreign oil. And you know, the drilling, that's a big deal right now. That Gulf oil thing, you mark my words, that Gulf oil thing is going to take 5 to 10 years out of how long it takes this country to move from where we are to where we're going to. You're going to see, I always use this as an example. When I was in college, if I wanted to use a computer, I had to have a stack of punch cards, and the mainframe computer would have just about filled this room. Today, 10 times more power in the palm of my hand than that mainframe computer of a generation ago. I'm just telling you guys, we're in this field, we're working in this area, and I am seeing advancements in this area faster than what this computer has advanced in our generation. You mark my words, a generation from now, energy is going to be completely different than what we have today. You want a big picture vision, what I think is coming? I honestly believe that we are going to have shingles developed for a roof that becomes solar panels. So the shingles, what we actually use for roofing material, what we call shingles today, is going to be replaced by a substance, and I'm not sure exactly how it's going to come out, but that roof substance that replaces shingles is going to be our solar panels, and our homes are actually going to be energy-producing units as opposed to homes that use energy today.
And how is government in the way of that? You've said that several times, get government out of the way.
If you want to start a business today and you want to build a shop, you know what you have to do? You have to first get a form. You have to go to your attorney, fill out a form to start the business. You have to name the officers and give a whole bunch of other personal information to the financial reporting office. There's a wide variety of other things. Then you start your tax records after that. And after that, the list just goes on and on and on. Then, if we would like to actually start this business in a location, I have to get a permit to either locate in an existing building, or worse yet, if I want to build a building for this business, the permits that we have to go through from the DNR to the city to the municipality to the county, it's staggering what you have to go through. Get our businesses streamlined to a point where they understand that we want them to grow and succeed here in the state of Wisconsin.
So which of those environmental regulations and tax regulations and things like that would you eliminate?
You guys, if everybody wants specifics, I'll give you some specifics. As a small business owner, when we developed a project that was 400 acres, We set aside 200 acres in southeastern Wisconsin in permanent green space out of 400 acres to develop the rest into a housing project. We had water retention ponds on it such that we removed 95% of the particles where the state standards are 80. Everything in this project was environmental. We used sulfur fuel in our machinery to reduce the pollutants, cost of $25,000, line item cost, not required. We did everything imaginable for this to be the most environmentally friendly project in the state of Wisconsin. I hired a biologist, 3 years with the DNR, to come on staff with me to help me decide how to make this the most environmentally friendly project in the state of Wisconsin. Went to the DNR. First thing we have to do is go to the town. The second thing we have to do is go to the county. Third thing we have to do is go to the DNR. Fourth thing we have to do is go to the Department of Army Corps of Engineers. Fifth thing we have to do, there's 7 on this list. I probably won't get to Extraterritorial is 5. There's 7 things, and there were 7 different organizations. Of course, then you have to check for Indian burial grounds. And by the way, if you want to check for Indian burial grounds, you actually have to go to the Historical Society in Madison. You guys, unless, and again, what I think it was you that some before said, how come this, we've got these people, they all say that they're going to go do this. And I say, well, it's because they've got a political background instead of a business background. Until you have actually lived through what I just described and experienced that firsthand, it's hard to fully comprehend just how far-reaching this really is.
I want to move on to a couple others, or one question I have. You have made the case that that the distinguishing characteristic between you and both Scott Walker and Tom Barrett, but really you're running against Scott Walker right now, is your experience in business. Is there a significant difference between your platform and your specific ideas and Scott Walker's
Yes,
right now?
And track record. I think the track record you bring to this is extremely important. If you go back and check when I was in Congress, I proposed budgets in Congress. I proposed a 7-year budget actually, but I'll take 6 of it so that we can do comparisons here. We literally proposed spending levels at a 1% reduction for each year that I had in that budget plan. So we were reducing the size and scope of government by 1% for every year I was in office. If you look at the years we went there in 1994, we had $250 billion deficits facing America. You will find that we reduced the growth rate of spending from over 8% at the federal level down to about 2%. And that controlling of government spending actually led to a balanced federal budget and the tax cuts that we were able to pass. If you look at Scott Walker's record as administrator, every year the county executive's office puts out...
It's not mine.
It's not mine either. Is that Derek's maybe? It's God calling to give us an evaluation of this interview, so I'm kidding.
Derek's phone.
Okay. Every year, the county administrator in Milwaukee, Scott Walker, puts out a budget, and he proposes spending levels in that budget every single year. I brought with me today for your review, if you'd like to see it. The total spending numbers are in blue there, and again, remember, these are Scott Walker's actual recommended budget. What I just gave you is the first budget that Scott Walker proposed in Milwaukee. He proposed a spending level of $1.1 billion in that spending level. The last budget Scott Walker put out, 2010, the tax levy numbers are on there also, but we'll get to those at some point in the future. Here's his 2010 proposal. It's significant to note, if you look at the blue numbers on their total county spending, that there's been an increase in spending of about $350 million over that period of time. That is a 35% spending increase. Now, it just happens he's been in office in the same amount of time as Jim Doyle. Jim Doyle presented the same budget numbers as he did, time period that is. And you'll find that the spending increases under Jim Doyle that have devastated our state were at about 27%. So I'm in a situation where I am running against someone who is very, very different than I am. He actually increased spending under his proposals faster than Jim Doyle did. And again, to put this in perspective, I'm in this race for governor because I honestly believe that the spending levels of Jim Doyle have led to tax increases in the state of Wisconsin that have driven our businesses out of here. I did not know this when I got in the race. When I found this information out, I found out we're very, very different people. If you listen to the rhetoric, probably don't sound that much different, but if you look at the record, we're very, very different people. That's the hardest thing I do, by the way. I'm not very good at talking about other people. I like building people up. I like talking about vision for the future of the state of Wisconsin. But when people ask me what the difference is between us, I think it's very important we understand that from a policy perspective and from a record perspective, I have a very different view on how we should be spending taxpayers' money.
But is it fair to summarize this as to say you may be saying similar things about what you'll, both of you may be saying similar things about what you'll do, but you're the one who will do it?
I'm saying we both have a record. We both have a record, and one of the records indicates that we can get the job done, and the other record is the record of increased spending. Gosh, you're making me. I don't like talking about them, but you guys, the facts, the numbers are the numbers. This is presentation of record. It's not about Scott Walker. It's about his performance in office. And if the people in the state of Wisconsin are going to decide who their next governor is going to be, they have a right to know what the track records are.
Well, I didn't make you run the ads, so.
I haven't run these yet.
I've seen these numbers out there.
We had a press conference where we revealed them, yes, but we did not run ads on them yet.
Kind of related to the ad thing, how's fundraising going? It takes a lot of money to run a campaign, and I heard a report that you are among the largest self-funders out there. Can you give me a sense of how much money have you raised? How much skin do you have in the game to keep your campaign going?
Sure. Not enough and too much. Fundraising, of course, is an important part of this. Having the ability to communicate a message is extremely important, and communicating a message costs money. There's just no way around it. We understand in this race that the political insiders and the political bigwigs are locked up in the Scott Walker camp on the Republican side, and frankly, they're in Tom Barrett's camp, of course, on the Democrat side. That leaves any outsider who wishes to run for office in a position where it is very difficult to raise money. And I'm very happy with the numbers that we have. I'm very happy with the support we've received. But it's very clear to me that if you're going to be able to communicate a message and you do not have the establishment support, that you're going to not have a lot of choices. And you either acknowledge that the good Lord has been very generous to you and that you're committed to doing this for the right reasons and that you're going to put some of your own resources into it, or you don't get in the race. And look, this country is being destroyed by the political insiders who make a career out of politics. And the only people that can stand up to them at this point in time is an outsider, is somebody who's been outside of the system and can stand up to the people that have made their careers here and change the state. And I honestly believe what we're doing is the most important thing in turning Wisconsin around. And we're one of many people, of course, not doing it by ourselves, but I believe it's what's necessary to turn America around. I really do. And to the extent we get private sector people to come forward and serve for a period of time and then go back to the private sector, we got a shot in this country. To the extent we leave it in the hands of the career politician, this country is history. And that's honestly how I feel and why I'm in the race.
But I'm sure we can find the specific numbers, but offhand, I mean, how much have you raised and how much is that, a portion of that is yours? Now,
you don't want me to disclose inside campaign information here shortly before filing date, do you?
Well, we'll
be okay with us.
Yeah.
Find the numbers, you know.
Yeah, we do file, the June 30th is the cutoff date, and we file on July 21st. So, and obviously I know those numbers, so I'm not going to lie to you and say I don't know what they are. I do know what they are, and I'm choosing not to disclose them ahead of time, if that's fair. Okay. I don't have it in me to tell you, so I don't know what they are. I can't do that. I've got a pretty good handle. We're doing fine. We're doing, this will be a month we exceed what our expectations were. So we're doing fine with it, but it's clear to me that any outsider that wishes to take on this establishment is going to need some of their own resources to do it in the environment we're in today, unfortunately.
Well, let's leave it there.
Okay, perfect.